NXT starts off with Javon Evans versus Josh Briggs. This match ended up starting due to Javon Evans ends up crashing out basically, ends up basically just automatically calling out Josh Briggs immediately the moment the show started. Josh Briggs comes out and then you end up getting a suicide dive from Javon Evans and then the match became official. This was a really good match. Really good match. Really enjoyed this match. Very shocked how this match played out because towards the end of the match, you know, we're getting Javon Evans getting up the upper hand. He goes for his signature cutter, and then you get Josh Briggs ends up attacking him while he was midair. Ends up, I wouldn't call it a clothesline, but he ends up basically punching him while he was in the air, while as he was coming down, and then he ends up getting the pinfall, picking up the victory. So Josh Briggs actually beat Javon Evans cleanly, which is very interesting, and I actually like it because this is something that is very rare in both on the main roster and NXT with heels winning cleanly. I like that they had the heel win cleanly because one of the main things that WWE typically does a lot is that they always got to protect the babyface in some way, whether it's by cheating, whether it's by the referee getting distracted, not seeing something. There's always something typically there. So the fact that Josh Briggs won cleanly, I actually like. Now, Javon Evans, of course, is going to eventually get his payback, come back around, but I do like that Josh Briggs actually won it cleanly, actually makes him feel somewhat credible, making him actually feel somewhat like a dominant threat. So I like what they did here. This was a really fun match. I'm actually interested in a rematch between these two, which is very shocking because I didn't think that I would care for an actual rematch. But I'm actually interested to see what an actual rematch between these two. So I'm interested to see this feud actually continue. We end up getting DIY. DIY comes out. They was cutting a promo, basically cutting a babyface like promo about NXT. Then you end up getting Trick Williams. He comes out and basically he ends up saying that this time he has backup, and his backup is Carmelo Hayes of all people. Then we end up getting Carmelo Hayes basically not looking like he's on the same page as Trick. He basically ends up glazing DIY. He ends up mentioning how Trick isn't, you know, the guy, and how Trick Williams has been talking so much trash about him, and how Trick Williams constantly even saying that he's the best NXT superstar of all time. And then Melo started mentioning himself and ends up mentioning how DIY paved the way for other NXT talent. Then Trick Williams comes back, responds. He ends up apologizing to Carmelo, but he ends up saying that he's still the top guy. Then you get Tommaso Ciampa. He ends up instigating, and he ends up wondering which of the two is the big brother. Is Trick the big brother of Melo, or is Melo the big brother of Trick? Melo ends up not liking that, and then this eventually just leads to them. Well, they didn't even agree to it. DIY just suggested it, and it seems like being official of the just being a tag team match between next week for NXT Homecoming between DIY and then Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes. Okay, so I don't really understand why this is even a thing or why we're ever doing this. It really don't make much sense. Like, I don't look. It's already one thing where it already doesn't make much sense because DIY are playing babyface roles when they're heels. That already don't make much sense. Then we're gonna have Trick Williams and Carmelo team up. I feel like the execution should have been a lot better if you wanted this match. I did like that Melo and Trick aren't friends. I do like that aspect. My only problem is the way we got here. I feel like we would have gotten here the same way if it was just executed better. I feel like all we had to do was just have Carmelo come out, do the same thing, but instead, why would Trick Williams call Carmelo Hayes for help? That kind of don't make sense to me. That doesn't really make much sense. I get that they're both heels, but that still don't make sense. Why would Trick Williams call out Melo for help? It should have just been Melo coming out by himself without Trick Williams calling for his help and cut the same promo. They go back and forth. They argue about who's better, get a bit heated. Then Tommaso Ciampa instigates. Then Melo gets mad about Tommaso Ciampa instigating, and then they both start tag teaming together to eventually go out the DIY because of their ego. That would have made way more sense. Kind of like what Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston did, where they was talking bad about each other at first. Then they shifted their anger towards Big E when they turned on Big E. That's all they had to do here. Have them argue against each other, cut the promo, then eventually shift their anger towards DIY. That's all they had to, like, I feel like their it would have worked better if they would have just executed it differently here. But maybe I'm just wrong, but I'm interested. Well, I'm not really interested in the match. We'll see how the match plays out. I can see it going either way, but I'm just like, why is this match still a thing? I still don't know because this match does nothing for nobody. This is really just a filler. This is really just filler, just a side quest for people for things that because DIY don't have nothing to do on SmackDown right now. Same thing with Carmelo Hayes for the most part, and I don't know what they're doing with Trick Williams until Bound for Glory, if I'm not mistaken. So this is really just filler for everyone until they need to do for better things. So we'll see how it plays out. We end up getting a quick Blake Monroe vignette package, and this was really good. This was very different than all of our other vignettes. This is it still had a similar style for the most part, the voiceover and everything. But one thing they ended up doing it was making it a lot more darker, giving it more like horror movie like vibe. We end up getting like a red like lighting, her in the bathtub, of course. You have her with her makeup, not as dolled up. Her makeup is coming off. I like what they did here. And you have Blake Monroe in the background saying that this is a new, more vicious, more ruthless version of her. She ends up mentioning that she ends up mentioning hell like 3 times in this promo. This was really good. I like what they did here. It seems like we're getting a more ruthless, more deadlier, a more aggressive version of Blake Monroe, which I really like. I like the because the Blake Monroe we was getting was very, let's just say she was very limited and very capped off. If we're gonna get a more depth, if we're gonna get the version we got in AEW, which I don't think we're gonna get complete all of that, of course, but we could get 80 to 70% of that version of AEW. Bro, her in NXT is going to be amazing. I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Still, somewhat, this has sparked my interest in this feud because, like I said, if we're getting a different version of Blake Monroe as a heel, this can make this feud way more interesting because this feud needs something. It needs something. It needs something. I don't know what it is. It needs something. It needs more intensity. It needs better promos. I don't know what it is, but it needs something to bring life into this. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out. I like the aesthetic that they was going for with it being this dark, like hardcore horror movie-esque vignette. I like what they're going with this. I like what they're going with this. Very interested to see how this plays out. We end up getting an NXT Tag Team Championship match between Dark State and Hank and Tank. Towards the end of the match, you end up getting Joe Hendry. He ends up coming out due to Jay Cutler ends up calling out Joe Hendry names. He was choking out one of the Hank and Tank members, of course. And he ends up basically saying that Joe Hendry isn't here to save you. Of course, by him saying his name, he comes out. Then you end up getting Joe Hendry chase Jay Cutler. And then the referee gets distracted by because Jay Cutler gets in the ring, gets out. Joe Hendry gets in the ring. The referee sees Joe Hendry, so tries to get Joe Hendry out the ring. Then you get Hank and Tank, one of Hank and Tank ended up, I think it was Hank that ended up getting the pinfall. He ends up rolling up one of the members of Dark State. I think it was Dion, if I'm not mistaken. But Dion ends up rolling him up. The referee didn't see him because as Dion rolled him up, he ends up holding his shorts. And then Hank and Tank retained the NXT Tag Team Championships. So I like what they did here. Now I don't really understand why we need Joe Hendry to tell this story. I just find it very cringe and corny. Because I just feel like it's unnecessary to a degree. Because I feel like everything that has happened in these matches could have just happened without Joe Hendry. But because Joe Hendry just feels like a third wheel. I don't understand this. Because the main story is between Hank and Tank and Dark State. But Joe Hendry is in the middle for whatever reason. And I don't understand what Joe Hendry gets out of this. I really don't. Like, I don't understand it. But he's in this feud for whatever reason. Well, to be fair, Dark State did attack him before. So I kind of understand it. But we'll see where this plays. See how this plays out. I'm assuming this is going to be the feud for basically probably for like a month or two, because there's no one else for Dark State to feud with because the NXT tag team division is dead. They have no competitor. Like, there is no tag team, which is very weird because they have teams that they can build up to a degree, like High Rise and Chase U, but they don't feature them enough on TV for them to actually feel important, to actually be competitive on NXT. So we'll see how this plays out. When I'm getting Tavion versus Ethan Page in a flag match. This was a solid match. I enjoyed this match. Now this isn't my typical type of match that I would like, to be honest with you. It was a unique stipulation. They haven't done these type of matches before. I'm not the biggest fan of going to the top rope and grabbing something in order to win, but Tavion Heights picked up the victory. This seems like this is most likely going to be the end of the feud. Interested to see what's next for Tavion. Now, I'm not going to get my hopes up because we all thought the same thing with other people like Miles Bourne and etc. So hopefully this is not one of those start-stop pushes that Shawn Michaels loves to do with certain wrestlers where he pushes them and then he just stops doing it, stop pushing them for all of a sudden. So hopefully they actually continue to push Tavion Heights and continue to do something. Well, actually, I did say he eventually could go out the North American Championship. So maybe this is not the end of the feud because it was just a flag match. So maybe Tavion will eventually go out to the North American Championship, and that would be the end of the feud. We'll see how this plays out. Very interested to see what happens, but I've been liking the feud. Hopefully this puts over Tavion because Ethan Page doesn't need to be in NXT anymore, but they may just keep Ethan Page for another year at this point. So we'll see how this plays out. We end up getting a triple threat elimination tag team, number one contendership women's tag team match between the Culling, Soruka Azaria, and Fatal Influence. This was really fun, really enjoyable match. The best match on the card, best match of the show. Towards the end of the match, we end up getting a moment where Soruka accidentally hit a Soul Snatcher on Zarya, which I really like because they always do this thing where Zarya is the one attacking Soruka. I like that they flipped it. Also, just pull the fucking trigger. It's time. It's time to pull the trigger on the Zarya and Soruka heel turn. We need it. Soruka has no competitors for either of her belts. She has nobody for the Speed Championship. Now, they're doing this tournament on Speed on NXT. I'm waiting to review that because right now, Speed looks like filler. It just looks like filler. It's giving me Heritage Cup vibes right now. So I'm going to wait before I give my opinions on that and before I actually review it on my NXT reviews. But she has no one to face for a North American Championship. Just have the heel turn already. Just start building it back up. I don't know what's taking them so long. I don't know why they dropped it. It's time to revisit that. And then the Cullen picks up the victory. Now, do I really care? No, because what made them the number one contenders anyway? It doesn't really make sense because from my knowledge, on SmackDown, the Secret Harvest has been feuding with Charlotte and Alexa Bliss. They should be getting a title opportunity before any of the NXT talent. And what have any of the NXT talent done to actually be number one contenders to even deserve this opportunity? Because they haven't faced any main roster teams at all. So I don't really understand it. But sure, they're gonna be number one contenders. They're gonna face Charlotte and Alexa Bliss. We all know who's winning in that match. That's why I don't really care because we all know they're not winning, and this does nothing for Tatum Paxley and Easy Dane outside of getting some TV time. But to be fair, they didn't struggle with TV time to begin with. So it is what it is. The match should be good, but I don't really care for this because it's like whatever. The main thing I'm just focused on is Zarya finally going to turn heel? Because before this match, they was having a segment about her finally wanting that championship gold. So hopefully this is the build of that heel turn. Then after the match, we end up getting Jacy Jayne. She cuts a promo. She basically crashes out, and she basically ends up blaming Fallon and Jasmine Nix. Takes all the credit for all of her success, how she doesn't need anybody, and how she's the greatest women's NXT champion of all time. Then you get Stephanie Vaquer. She comes out, basically ends up doing the same shit that DIY last week did, which is basically confronting her because she called herself the greatest NXT Women's Champion. Then you get Tiffany Stratton do the same thing that Stephanie did. Then you get Rhea Ripley do the same thing that Tiffany Stratton does. And then they brawl, and then, of course, I wonder who won that, which is the baby faces. Okay, why? This is all to set up next week's show, which I still don't understand why. Look, I don't mind main roster talent coming over to NXT, but if you're going to do that, make it connect. Try to tell a story that makes sense. I'm not saying it has to be an in-deep story. Like, for example, when CM Punk came in on NXT, they made it make sense by him being a special guest referee and him having issues with Ethan Page. Then they told that story in the match. That's, like, this made no fucking sense. Because the story is literally, hey, you called yourself the greatest NXT Women's Champion of all time. I don't think so. I think I'm that. Like, that's the feud? Like, really? That's the issue. You know what would have been a better idea? You could have had Jacy Jayne cut that promo she cut on tonight's episode, cut it yesterday and cut it last week and the week before, and she calls out each Stephanie, Tiffany, and Rhea. She could have been like, "Look, I'm the greatest women's champion of all time." Then she started listing all-time greats. She started listing Stephanie, Tiffany, and Rhea. She lists all three of them and says that she's better than all three of them and that there's no one on her level. Then this week, you could have done the Stephanie, Tiffany. It would have made more sense then because all you had to do was recopy what you just did with Nia Jax. Lash Legend, when she eliminated Nia Jax, what did she do? Kept mentioning Nia Jax's name. Nia Jax confronted her because she kept mentioning her name. All you had to do is have Stephanie, Tiffany, and Rhea come out together and be like, "Look, you had our names in your mouth, so we're here to confront you." That's it. Look, why did they go with, "Hey, she thinks she's the best NXT Women's Champion of all time"? I don't like that. I think I'm the best, so we're gonna confront. Like what? Like, are we serious right now? Like I said, I don't mind main roster talent coming over. Just make it make sense. This makes no sense. And we all know who's winning. We all know who's winning. That's what I don't like either. Because we all know it's going to be the most predictable match ever. Overall, this show was fine. It was a decent show. But hopefully next week is better. But you guys let me know your overall thoughts and opinions below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. But yeah, that's it.